lot of this is due to her behavior leading up to the film's release.
Uniquely unlikable, but then it is actually a terrible film as well. So it's the double whammy.
It was shaping up to be Disney's next billion-dollar hit, until one live stream flipped everything upside down. Rachel Zegler, the lead star of the Snow White remake, went live on Instagram. And what happened next turned a struggling movie into a Hollywood cautionary tale. Her emotional, unscripted rant didn't just stir controversy. It became the moment fans, critics, and even studio insiders pointed to when everything started unraveling. What was meant to be a bold, modern reimagining became a PR disaster overnight. But this isn't just about a meltdown. It's about how one moment, one attitude, and one bad read of the audience can take down an entire production, and maybe even a career. It started like any other celebrity live stream, casual, spontaneous, and unfiltered. But within minutes, it became something else entirely. Rachel Zegler, the face of Disney's high-stakes Snow White remake, took to Instagram Live and, instead of promoting the film, vented her frustrations in real time. Her tone was defensive, her words sharp, and the reaction was immediate. She didn't hold back. Zegler dismissed the original 1937 Snow White as outdated, mocked key plot elements, and brushed off criticism as irrelevant. Her facial expressions, the eye rolls, the sighs, the visible irritation, were screenshotted and shared before the live stream even ended. What fans saw wasn't a polished star on a press tour. It was a young actor, clearly frustrated, pushing back hard against the people she needed the most, the audience. Within hours, clips from the stream went viral, not because they were heartfelt, but because they came across as condescending. Memes flooded social media. Snow woke, critics called it. Hashtags like Not My Snow White started trending. And just like that, the conversation shifted. People weren't talking about costumes, CGI, or plot updates anymore. They were talking about her. The live wasn't just a bad look, it was a breaking point. One moment of unscripted emotion became the symbol of a much deeper disconnect between Disney's vision and its fan base. A disconnect that now had a face, a voice, and a headline: Rachel Zegler's Meltdown. Long before the live stream made headlines, the numbers were already whispering a warning. Snow White was in trouble, and no one at Disney wanted to say it out loud. Months before its release, the film was hyped as a surefire blockbuster, a legacy title, a built-in fan base. All Disney had to do was modernize the visuals, update the themes, and ride the wave of nostalgia. Instead, they rode straight into a wall. Insiders began noticing cracks during early promotional events. Advanced screenings, which were expected to sell out, had rows of empty seats. Early social media buzz, usually a goldmine for Disney, was tepid at best, and downright hostile at worst. Even the massive marketing blitz, reportedly costing tens of millions, failed to generate genuine excitement. The online chatter wasn't about anticipation, it was about confusion and backlash. Then came opening weekend. Theaters were deserted, numbers rolled in, and they were disastrous. Not just underwhelming, humiliating. For a film with such a massive budget, every ticket sold counted. But audiences didn't show up. And those who did? Many left disappointed. According to industry analysts, the production budget had already ballooned well beyond expectations. Add in reshoots, promotional costs, and late-stage visual effects adjustments, and suddenly the break-even point was a mountain the film had no chance of climbing. Internally, panic set in. Executives scrambled to find answers, or at least someone to blame. And right on cue, Zegler's viral meltdown gave the press and the public a target. Her live stream became the scapegoat, the lightning rod, the symbol of everything that went wrong. Even though the movie had issues far beyond one bad PR moment, her outburst made it personal. And in the age of internet outrage, personal sells. The media framed it as a textbook example of what not to do. Star bashes beloved classic, fans revolt, movie bombs. It was too clean, too clickable, and too late to fix. By the time week 2 rolled around, even optimistic projections had been thrown out. Some insiders quietly acknowledged that Snow White could lose hundreds of millions by the end of its run. A few even speculated whether Disney would shelve similar remakes in the future or rethink their entire approach to adapting classic stories. Because this wasn't just a box office flop. This was a warning shot, a signal that audiences weren't going to blindly support reboots, especially not ones that seemed to disrespect what came before. And the irony? The more Disney tried to distance itself from the drama, the more the drama defined the film. The numbers weren't just bad, they were historic. And the longer the meltdown trended, the deeper the hole got. What should have been a legacy project became a crisis. And for the people at the top, the message was clear. No amount of CGI, marketing, or studio polish can save a movie when the audience feels like the villain. There's one thing studios consistently underestimate. Nostalgia isn't just sentimental, it's sacred. Snow White wasn't just Disney's first princess. For millions, it was their first movie memory. The music, the dwarfs, the love story, it's hardwired into childhoods across generations. So when you remake something that beloved, you're not just updating a story, you're stepping into a cultural landmark. And Rachel Zegler, knowingly or not, walked in with a sledgehammer. In multiple interviews, she referred to the original film as weird and outdated. She criticized the romantic arc, labeled the prince a stalker, and said the story needed to be radically reimagined. On paper, that might sound like a bold, feminist approach, but in execution, it felt like mockery, not just of the story, but of the people who loved it. That tone carried straight into her live stream. There, Zegler doubled down, dismissing old themes, brushing off fan concerns, and showing visible frustration at anyone who didn't agree. For viewers hoping for a fresh yet faithful take, it was a gut punch. They weren't just being ignored, they were being laughed at, and that's where things truly unraveled. Because here's the truth. Nostalgia isn't opposed to change. Audiences have embraced modern updates before, from Cinderella to Maleficent. But the difference? Those adaptations still respected the emotional DNA of the originals. They added depth without erasing charm. They evolved, but they never sneered. Zegler's performance, both on-screen and online, gave fans the impression that she didn't believe in the story she was telling, that she was above it. And when the lead actor publicly mocks the foundation of the film, how can the audience be expected to trust the rest? Even people who supported a modern take felt uneasy. The original's themes, kindness, love, innocence, weren't just story beats. They were the whole point. Remove them, and what's left? Instead of being a bridge between generations, the new Snow White became a wedge. Traditionalists saw it as cultural vandalism. Progressives felt the messaging was heavy-handed and joyless. It didn't win over new fans, and it alienated the old ones. In trying to modernize a legacy, the film ended up erasing it. And once nostalgia is broken, it's almost impossible to put back together. The worst part? It didn't have to be this way. Zegler didn't need to embrace every detail of the 1937 classic, but she did need to respect the audience's connection to it. Instead, the message many fans heard was loud and clear. Your version of Snow White doesn't matter anymore. And just like that, the magic was gone. Just a year earlier, Rachel Zegler's name was on every studio's radar. After her breakout role in West Side Story, she was hailed as the next big thing, talented, articulate, and perfectly positioned to lead the next generation of movie stars. Disney casting her as Snow White? That was supposed to be her coronation. But Hollywood has a short memory, and an even shorter fuse. After the Meltdown, the narrative shifted fast. Industry insiders started using a term no actor wants tied to their name: box office poison, a label reserved for stars whose presence in a project actively hurts ticket sales. And it didn't just come from tabloids. It came from people inside the business: producers, agents, marketing execs. Quietly but undeniably, conversations were happening. The question wasn't just what happened with Snow White. It became, can she carry another film after this? Zegler's passionate personality, once seen as charmingly outspoken, was now being read as combative. Her media appearances, previously confident and bold, were reinterpreted as arrogant. Clips resurfaced where she laughed off romantic plots, mocked traditional characters, or boasted that people will line up for anything I do. In isolation, they might have been harmless, but in the shadow of the film's collapse, they looked like hubris. And here's the thing. Studios don't just look at performance. They look at perception. Is this actor marketable? Are they brand safe? Will they help promote a project or become the story that swallows it? Zegler, almost overnight, became a cautionary tale. Social media made things worse. The memes didn't stop. The comment sections were brutal. Viewers who hadn't even seen the movie felt like they already knew the whole saga. An actress who insulted the original alienated fans and blamed everyone but herself when it all went wrong. And the film's co-stars? Silent. No one rushed to her defense. No emotional posts. No solidarity on talk shows. Just polite answers about the great team and hard work, vague enough to avoid landmines. The silence said a lot. Hollywood is built on image. And for better or worse, Zegler's image had changed. From promising lead to problematic risk. From fresh face to fire starter. She still has talent. She still has a future. But the road ahead? It's no longer paved with golden opportunities. Now, it comes with warning signs and a trail of red flags that every casting director will be reading twice. Because in this business, perception is the product, and one viral moment can turn a dream role into a career detour. By the time the trailer dropped, fans were already asking the obvious question: where are the dwarfs? The original Snow White's charm wasn't just in its love story, it was in its whimsical characters. especially the Seven Dwarfs. Doc, Grumpy, Sleepy, and the rest weren't just comic relief. They were heart, personality, legacy. But in the 2024 version, they were gone, replaced by an odd assortment of CGI-enhanced, non-human, magical creatures. The move was meant to be progressive, but to many, it just felt hollow. Peter Dinklage had famously criticized the idea of reviving the dwarfs as outdated, a view Disney clearly took seriously. But rather than reimagine those roles in a respectful, empowering way, the studio seemed to panic and scrap them entirely. What replaced them wasn't clarity, it was confusion. And that wasn't the only thing missing. Sources claimed entire story arcs were being rewritten deep into production. Test screenings reportedly left audiences baffled. Romance gone. Emotional beats, flat. The prince's role, virtually non-existent. Even the scenes with Andrew Burnap, cast as the male lead, were rumored to have been slashed. One crew member allegedly joked, "He's in the movie," until he's not. Behind the scenes, the production was spiraling. Reports of costly reshoots began to surface. The tone was being tweaked, then retweaked again. Was it a love story? A feminist reboot? A fantasy epic? No one could tell. That lack of direction bled into every aspect of the film. Visually, it was polished. The sets were elaborate. The cinematography had moments of beauty. But without a core identity, it all felt like a patchwork. Expensive, ambitious, and ultimately empty. And this is where things got worse. Because the confusion wasn't just on screen, it was in the messaging. One minute, the movie was being sold as a modern empowerment tale. The next, the lead actor was slamming the original. Then the studio tried to backpedal, insisting it still honored Disney tradition. To audiences, it felt like whiplash. What exactly were they watching? A remake? A reimagining? A rejection of everything the original stood for? Or some Frankenstein mix of all three? And while all of this was unfolding behind closed doors, Zegler's Meltdown exploded in public, giving fans a clear villain for their frustration. But the truth is, the movie itself was already adrift. The Meltdown didn't cause the chaos, it simply exposed it. In the end, the film didn't fail because it was too progressive. It failed because it was directionless. It tried to modernize without a map, and in doing so, it erased the things people loved, without offering anything strong enough to replace them. What was supposed to be a timeless tale reimagined became a modern fable of its own. A story about what happens when a studio forgets what story it's even trying to tell. Before the fallout, Rachel Zegler's confidence was her brand. She didn't just star in films, she owned the spotlight. She gave unapologetic interviews, leaned into bold opinions, and proudly pitched herself as part of a new generation that would reshape Hollywood. At first, it worked. She was praised for being refreshingly honest, not media-trained into blandness like many rising stars, but honesty, when paired with a tone that feels dismissive or smug, can quickly turn into something else. And when the pressure hit, Zegler didn't pivot, she doubled down. In interviews, she laughed off the idea of needing a prince. On social media, she questioned why anyone still held the 1937 film in high regard. And during that now infamous live stream, the arrogance hit its peak. Her message, whether intended or not, was clear. I know better than the fans. And if you don't agree, you're the problem. That's where the backlash hardened. Because audiences can tolerate change. They'll even tolerate a lackluster performance. But what they won't tolerate is being talked down to, especially by someone leading a remake of a movie they deeply love. Zegler's comments about the original's romance being creepy or irrelevant struck many as tone-deaf. Her offhand remarks suggesting people would come see the film just because she's in it read as hubris, not hype. And as box office numbers crashed, that confidence started to look more like delusion. Even viewers who might have agreed with her vision, a more independent Snow White, a stronger female lead, began to recoil at how the message was delivered. Empowerment doesn't need to come with eye rolls and smug takedowns. That's how it felt. It didn't help that in every clip her frustration was palpable, her voice tense, her eyes narrowed. She wasn't celebrating progress, she was waging war with the past. That attitude gave critics ammo and made casual viewers uncomfortable. She wasn't seen as passionate, she was seen as combative. And suddenly, it wasn't about the movie anymore. It was about her. And the question everyone was asking, why is she so angry at the fans? Some supporters praised her for standing her ground, but they were drowned out by a far louder majority who felt alienated. What should have been an opportunity to bridge old and new, tradition and progress, turned into a standoff, and Zegler was positioned as the one drawing the battle lines. Instead of engaging with the legacy, she rejected it. Instead of guiding fans into a new era, she pushed them away. And that's not bravery. That's branding gone wrong. In a business that thrives on likability and relatability, Zegler's unapologetic posture became her biggest liability. Her refusal to acknowledge valid fan concerns wasn't read as strength, it was seen as scorn. And that shift in tone sealed the deal. The audience wasn't just disappointed in the film, they felt insulted by the star. As Rachel Zegler's live stream tore through social media and headlines, something strange started happening, or, more accurately, didn't happen. No one backed her up, not the co-stars, not the director, not Disney. There were no tweets of support, no interview soundbites offering context, and no public statements softening the fallout, just a wall of corporate silence, and an ensemble cast doing everything they could to avoid being dragged into the storm. Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen, shifted press conversations toward the visual effects. Other actors stuck to vague praise about working with a great team. No one mentioned Zegler by name unless asked directly. And when they did, their answers were cautious, tightly worded, and emotionally distant. That silence said more than any quote ever could. Behind the scenes, reports began surfacing of rising tension. Some crew members allegedly felt Zegler's livestream derailed the entire press strategy. Just as the studio was gearing up to salvage whatever reputation the film had left, the Meltdown shifted all focus onto her. Away from the project, the team, the years of work poured into the production. One insider put it bluntly, "She made it about herself when we needed unity." This wasn't a typical cast defending one of their own. This was damage control in real time. And Zegler, once the face of the film, was suddenly on an island. It didn't help that rumors started swirling of behind-the-scenes disagreements. About tone, about rewrites, about the messaging surrounding the film. Some claimed Zegler clashed with marketing teams who asked her to dial back her criticisms of the original. Others speculated that crew members felt blindsided by her public comments, especially when they had worked so hard to preserve at least some of the magic from the 1937 classic. While none of these rumors were confirmed, the absence of public unity spoke for itself. A cast rallying behind their star usually signals internal cohesion. A cast going silent? That's often a sign that the studio has already moved into self-preservation mode. In the entertainment world, perception is everything, and Zegler became the story everyone else wanted to avoid. Internally, some reportedly saw her as having hijacked the narrative not to save the film, but to wage a personal war with critics and legacy fans. Instead of leading the charge on a challenging project, she became a liability. Someone whose voice, rather than elevating the film, made it harder to promote. For the rest of the team, the fallout was brutal. Years of effort were overshadowed by one moment of public frustration. Creative decisions, technical achievements, even well-executed performances, all of it drowned beneath the noise of a viral meltdown. Every big-budget film carries risk. Some underperform, some get mixed reviews, and some just quietly disappear into the streaming void. But what happened with Snow White was different. This film didn't just flop, it became synonymous with a single moment of emotional implosion. Rachel Zegler's Instagram Live wasn't a side note or a footnote, it became the headline. The movie's entire identity was reduced to a few viral clips, a handful of smug comments, and the ripple effect of one misjudged rant. Everything else, the visuals, the costumes, the music, faded into the background noise. It didn't matter that the cinematography had polish, or that the musical score had promise, or that the film's design team had poured years into the look and feel of the world. Because in the public consciousness, Snow White wasn't a movie anymore. It was a meltdown with a marketing budget. You couldn't talk about the film without talking about Zegler's attitude. Even reviews that tried to focus on the story or performances inevitably circled back to her livestream. Every attempt to shift the narrative, to spotlight the film's creative merit, was drowned out by the ever-growing online chorus of backlash. Commentary videos exploded across YouTube. Headlines framed the debacle as a Hollywood cautionary tale. TikToks parodied her lines from the stream. Tweets mocked her as the girl who trashed her own movie. It didn't even matter whether people had seen the film. The idea of the film had already been cemented. Arrogant star, disrespected legacy, audience rejection. And that's a nightmare scenario for any studio. Because when the narrative becomes the actual product stops mattering. Executives who greenlit the project couldn't have imagined that the most memorable image from the entire rollout would be a side-eye on Instagram. But there it was, shared millions of times, Zegler scowling at her critics, frustrated and flustered, unintentionally handing Disney's biggest critics a golden soundbite. Even years from now, when people look back at Snow White 2024, they won't reference box office numbers or technical notes. They'll remember the meltdown, that singular moment where the press tour went off the rails, and the lead actor became the story, for all the wrong reasons. In a media environment this saturated, most failures are forgotten. But this one, it stood out. Because it wasn't just about a movie bombing. It was about a star lighting the fuse. Hollywood can forgive a flop, but it rarely forgets a flameout, especially one broadcast live. For Rachel Zegler, the Instagram meltdown wasn't just a PR hiccup. It became a turning point, a moment that reframed how audiences, studios, and industry insiders saw her, not as a breakout star, but as a potential liability. In the weeks following the release, conversations quietly shifted behind the scenes. Casting directors who once had her at the top of their call sheets started second-guessing. Studio execs reportedly raised concerns about her public image. And while no one put it on paper, the message was loud and clear. This kind of baggage doesn't come cheap. Zegler's confidence, once seen as bold and refreshing, had curdled into something studios dread: unpredictability. She had taken one of the most iconic roles in Disney history and used its press cycle to wage a cultural war she wasn't equipped to win. And the damage wasn't just about one film. Future projects that might have welcomed her voice now had to weigh the risk. Will the headlines be about the movie or about her? Will interviews spark excitement or ignite another controversy? Can she be trusted with the weight of a franchise, or will she overshadow the story again? In Hollywood, perception is market value, and Zegler's value had taken a hit. Publicly, she stayed quiet for a while. There were no major apologies, no attempts to walk things back, just silence, followed by strategic reappearances in unrelated press. Interviews where the Snow White disaster was carefully dodged, but the internet never really let go. Anytime her name trended, the meltdown resurfaced. And it wasn't just trolls or critics keeping it alive. It was fans, people who wanted to like her, who were excited about the remake, but couldn't reconcile her combative attitude with their love for the original. They felt talked down to, pushed away, and they weren't ready to move on. That lingering resentment has become the backdrop to her career. Could she bounce back? Absolutely. Hollywood is full of comeback stories. A single strong performance in a different role, a smart apology, a genuine shift in tone. These things can turn reputations around. But for now, Zegler carries a very public lesson that being right doesn't always matter if you lose the room. Because that live stream, those few unscripted minutes, became a brand, not of empowerment, not of progress, but of miscalculation. A warning about what happens when personal pride overshadows the project, when the audience feels like an afterthought, and when legacy is treated like a punchline. And whether she likes it or not, the meltdown is now part of her IMDb history. A moment so loud, so defining, it may echo through her career long after the final ticket from Snow White was sold. In the end, Snow White 2024 wasn't just another reboot gone wrong. It became a symbol of misread audiences, misunderstood nostalgia, and a megastar moment that went viral for all the wrong reasons. Rachel Zegler's meltdown didn't break the film. It exposed what was already broken, a story that didn't know who it was for, a production more focused on optics than emotion, and a studio that underestimated just how deeply people still cared about a 1937 cartoon. Because nostalgia isn't a trend, it's a trust. When you touch something that shaped generations, people don't want a copy. They want a connection. Change is welcome, even expected, but not if it comes with contempt. What this moment proved more than anything is that the audience isn't passive. They don't just watch. They react, they respond, and they remember. And when they feel disrespected, no amount of marketing, no CGI, no celebrity live stream can win them back. Ziegler's outburst may have felt like a small moment, a few emotional minutes, venting into a phone screen. But those few minutes triggered millions of reactions. They reshaped careers, redefined the film, and rewrote what was supposed to be a legacy-defining role. Now, every time a studio plans a remake, they'll ask, are we honoring the original or mocking it? Every time they cast a bold new face, they'll wonder, can they carry the message without becoming the message? Because the meltdown wasn't just viral, it was instructional. It showed how fast a project can fall apart when it loses sight of what made the original matter, how quickly a press tour can become a cautionary tale, and how one actor's frustration, shared in real time, can torch the bridge between audience and story. Snow White will survive. The 1937 classic isn't going anywhere, but this version? It's already being buried beneath memes, headlines, and bitter lessons. And long after the box office numbers fade, the meltdown will remain, not as a scandal, but as a case study, a warning, a mirror. Because when you remake a legend, you better understand why it was legendary in the first place.